There's a certain quiet tenderness in those first steps into the garden each morning. Isn't there, dear friend? The air is cool, the light is soft, and for just a moment everything feels exactly as it should. Maybe you carry a warm cup of coffee, or maybe you simply pause to listen to the birds waking up. But then as your eyes drift toward your tomatoes, roses, or tender new growth, that familiar disappointment arrives. Clusters of tiny pests shimmer on the stems and undersides of leaves, almost mocking the care you've poured into this space. It's a feeling many older gardeners know too well, the sense of fighting a battle you didn't sign up for, and one you certainly don't want to fight with harsh chemicals or exhausting hand-picking. I've heard countless stories from gardeners in their 60s, 70s, even 80s who describe that same sinking moment. One woman from Ohio told me she used to bend over each morning plucking aphids one by one until her back hurt so badly she'd need the rest of the day to recover. Another gardener said he tried every spray on the shelf, only to find himself worried about whether his grandkids should even touch the plants afterward. These frustrations build slowly like a quiet fog settling over the joy of tending a garden. But the truth is, you're not alone in feeling this way, and you certainly haven't failed. Gardens attract life, both the kind we invite and the kind we'd rather not. And the goal isn't to fight harder, but to find gentler ways to restore balance. Before long, you'll see that even stubborn pests can be managed with calm, simple solutions that protect your plants, your health, and your peace of mind. Many gardeners, especially those who have tended the same patch of earth for years, tell me that the hardest part isn't the pests themselves. It's the feeling of doing everything right and still watching the problem return. You try a little dish soap, you rinse the leaves, you pull off the worst ones, and for a moment you think you've won. But 2 mornings later, they're back, sometimes in greater numbers, almost as if they regrouped overnight. And when you've spent decades nurturing gardens through droughts, storms, and seasons that never seemed quite predictable, this cycle of hope and frustration can feel especially draining. What makes it even more discouraging is the way age changes the effort required. Stooping to examine every leaf isn't as easy as it used to be. Standing in the heat while you mix solutions or scrub hands sticky from squished pests can feel overwhelming. A gentleman in Florida once shared that after a lifetime of farming, it wasn't pests that finally made him consider downsizing. It was the bending. I felt like my body gave out before my garden did, he told me. That feeling is far more common than people admit. Then there's the emotional toll. You nurture a plant from seed or sapling, watching it grow like a beloved companion through the seasons. Seeing it covered in aphids or mealybugs can feel like a personal loss, as though the garden you've tended with such tenderness is slipping away from you. But here's the comfort I want you to hold on to. The discouragement you feel is not a sign that gardening is becoming too hard. It's a sign that you deserve gentler, smarter methods, ones that work with your energy, not against it. And those methods absolutely exist. Another challenge many gardeners quietly struggle with is the uneasy relationship with chemical sprays. The label promises quick results, but the fine print leaves you wondering what you're really putting into your soil and onto your plants. I've met so many seniors who tell me they hesitate every time they reach for a bottle. One woman from Arizona said she used to spray her hibiscus only when her grandchildren weren't visiting, afraid the residue might cling to their curious little fingers. Another gardener told me she stopped buying pesticides altogether after the smell alone gave her headaches that lasted the rest of the afternoon. There's also the matter of trust. Most of us grew up hearing that store-bought solutions were the only reliable ones, but the price tags keep climbing, while the results seem less dependable each year. A retired veteran from North Carolina shared that he spent nearly $30 on a single bottle only to watch the pests return within days. It felt like I was renting a solution instead of solving anything, he said with a sad laugh. Many of us know that feeling all too well. Beyond the cost and the concerns, there's the simple desire for peace. Gardening is supposed to be restorative, not stressful. You shouldn't have to hold your breath while spraying, worry about whether your pets will walk through treated soil, or wonder if you should still eat the lettuce you worked so lovingly to grow. When gardening starts to feel like managing a hazardous materials site, something is out of balance. That's why so many older gardeners begin searching for gentler alternatives, not to cut corners, but to reclaim the safety and serenity that gardening is meant to bring. And once you discover solutions that are simple, natural, and deeply effective, the relief is almost immediate. So let's turn toward something far more comforting, dear friend, an old remedy that has quietly protected gardens for generations, long before shelves were crowded with neon bottles and warning labels. Garlic may seem like an ordinary kitchen staple, something you sprinkle into soups or roast alongside potatoes, but in the garden it becomes a humble little powerhouse. Older gardeners used to keep a jar of it on hand, the way others kept a first aid kit. I once spoke to an 84-year-old woman in Virginia who remembered her grandfather crushing garlic bulbs with the back of a spoon and steeping them in warm water to keep pests off his orchard trees. We didn't have money for sprays, she told me, but we had garlic and it always worked well enough. What makes garlic so special isn't magic. It's nature doing exactly what it was designed to do. Its natural compounds act like a tiny alarm system insects can't ignore. Soft-bodied pests, aphids, mealybugs, whiteflies are repelled by it in a way that's almost instinctive to them, as if the very scent signals danger. And instead of harming pollinators or beneficial insects, garlic simply creates a "not welcome here" message for the ones that feed on your plant's tender new growth. It's wonderfully empowering, especially for gardeners who want effective control without harsh chemicals. And what surprises many people is how gentle garlic is when used correctly. Children can play near it, pets can brush past treated leaves, and you can harvest your tomatoes or herbs with confidence after a simple rinse. The beauty of this simple ingredient is that it allows you to protect your plants without sacrificing your peace of mind. Once you understand how to prepare and apply it, garlic becomes less of an ingredient and more of a quiet garden companion, one that stands guard while you enjoy the growing season. Now that we've welcomed garlic into the spotlight, let's talk about putting it to work in a way that's both gentle on you and powerful against pests. The beauty of this recipe lies not just in its simplicity, but in how forgiving it is once you understand the purpose of each ingredient. You don't need fancy equipment, a strong arm, or a science background, just a few household items and a bit of patience. Garlic powder works best when paired with 2 helpers, clean, chlorine-free water and a mild dish soap. Together they form a solution that clings softly to your plant's leaves and coats the pests that hide beneath them. Many gardeners ask why the water needs to be dechlorinated, and the answer is simple. Chlorine can neutralize some of the helpful compounds in garlic. Think of it like making a delicate tea. If the water is too harsh, the flavor changes. Letting tap water sit out overnight is usually all it takes, and it requires no extra effort. The dish soap may seem like an afterthought, but it's what allows the mixture to truly work. Without it, the liquid slides off the leaves like rain on a waxed car. With it, the solution spreads gently across the surface, staying put long enough to do its job. For those with sensitive hands or arthritis, choosing a soap that's unscented and neutral makes mixing and spraying much more pleasant. Gardeners often tell me they're surprised by how affordable and accessible these ingredients are. There's something deeply reassuring about discovering that the best solutions don't come from expensive bottles. They come from understanding how simple things work together in harmony. Once mixed properly, this recipe becomes a true ally, bringing hope back into even the most pest-weary garden. Once you have your ingredients gathered, the next step is creating the mixture in a way that feels comfortable and manageable for your body. Many gardeners underestimate how much ease and accessibility matter, especially as we grow older. Mixing shouldn't require bending over a low table, lifting heavy pitchers, or struggling with stiff spray nozzles. A dear friend of mine in her 70s taught me a lovely habit. She prepares all her garden solutions at kitchen counter height, where her back stays straight and her hands can move freely. Little adjustments like that make the whole process feel more sustainable. Start with your quart of dechlorinated water poured into a lightweight bowl or pitcher. Add the garlic powder, slowly giving it time to blend instead of clumping. Stirring for a couple of minutes may sound tedious, but many gardeners find it surprisingly calming, almost like whisking a gentle broth on a quiet afternoon. Then add your tablespoon of mild dish soap and stir again, this time a little more softly, just enough to bring everything into a smooth, unified mixture. When it comes to choosing a spray bottle, think of your comfort first. There are wonderful bottles with easy trigger handles or continuous mist options that require very little squeezing. Seniors with arthritis often prefer these because they reduce strain on the fingers and wrists. Pour the mixture carefully using a funnel if needed. No need to rush. The tiny flecks of garlic that remain suspended in the liquid are not a mistake. They're part of what makes the formula effective. By taking your time, setting up your workspace thoughtfully, and choosing tools that work with your abilities rather than against them, the whole process becomes less of a chore and more of a gentle ritual, one that prepares you and your garden for healthier days ahead. Now that your mixture is ready, the real art comes in how you apply it. Many gardeners don't realize that timing and technique can make the difference between a healthy plant and one that suffers injury. But don't worry, once you understand the rhythm of spraying, it becomes just another peaceful part of your gardening routine. Think of it like knowing the best moment to water your plants or when to prune a branch. It's less about strict rules and more about kindness toward your garden's natural needs. The safest times to spray are early morning or late afternoon, when the sun sits low and temperatures are gentle. A woman from Colorado once told me she sets her alarm just before sunrise, not because she has to, but because walking through her garden with a spray bottle at dawn feels like a small meditation. She learned the hard way, though. One summer she sprayed at midday, and her poor tomato leaves turned brittle and brown almost overnight. Since then, she says she treats spraying the way she treats a cup of tea, slow, intentional, and never rushed. When applying the garlic solution, hold your spray bottle about 8 to 12 inches from the plant. Coat the tops of the leaves first, then this is essential. Gently lift each leaf and spray the underside. Most pests, especially aphids and mealybugs, prefer hiding where sunlight rarely reaches. Taking a few extra minutes to reach those tucked-away spots is what transforms this method from somewhat helpful to truly effective. Move slowly around the plant, spraying the stems, the soil surface near the base, and even the rim of containers. Gardens thrive when we treat them with thoroughness rather than haste. And once you find your rhythm, this careful approach becomes surprisingly soothing, almost like brushing the dust off a cherished keepsake. Even the best gardeners fall into a few familiar traps, and these small mistakes can make it seem like nothing works, even when the solution itself is sound. The good news is that each of these pitfalls is easy to correct once you know what to watch for, and when you do, your garden responds almost immediately, as if relieved that you've finally learned its language. The first mistake is spraying in strong, direct sunlight. Plants like us can only tolerate so much heat at once. When garlic and soap rest on leaves under intense midday rays, the combination can act like a magnifying glass. I remember a gardener from New Mexico telling me she thought her plants had caught a disease because brown speckles began appearing the day after she sprayed at noon. She learned later that it was leaf burn, not illness, something completely preventable. Now she sprays only during those gentle windows when the light feels soft, and she hasn't had a problem since. The second mistake is focusing only on what you can easily see, the tops of the leaves. But pests aren't silly. They hide where fingers and sunlight seldom reach. A man in Tennessee once told me he used to brag about how carefully he sprayed until someone asked if he'd ever checked underneath the leaves. When he finally did, he found entire city blocks of aphids living comfortably out of sight. Spraying both sides changed everything. The third mistake is believing that one treatment is enough. Pests hatch in cycles, and while the adults disappear quickly, their eggs wait patiently, a gentle, spaced-out routine. 3 treatments over roughly 10 days disrupts their rhythm and protects your plants far beyond the initial spray. These aren't warnings meant to frighten you. They're small lessons that make gardening smoother, lighter, and far more rewarding. Different plants respond to care in their own unique ways, much like people. What nourishes one might overwhelm another, and understanding those subtleties is what turns a gardener into a true caretaker. When using your gentle garlic solution, it helps to think of each plant group as having its own personality. Fruit trees, for example, citrus, figs, small container peaches tend to be sturdy and appreciative of a full, confident spray. Their thicker leaves and waxy coatings can handle a bit more moisture, and treating the fruit itself is perfectly safe as long as you rinse it before bringing it to the table. A retired teacher from Georgia once told me she sprays her backyard lemon tree the same way she waters it from top to bottom with calm, sweeping motions. Her harvest has never looked better. Leafy greens, though lettuce, spinach, kale, are far more delicate. They prefer a light misting touch, as too much moisture can weigh them down or leave them feeling waterlogged. Think of brushing crumbs off a table rather than wiping it down. One gardener in her 70s shared that she holds her bottle a little farther back when treating her salad beds, letting the spray fall like a soft morning fog rather than a direct stream. Flowering plants such as roses and hibiscus often welcome a slightly stronger mix because their blooms stand up well to treatment, and the pests that target them tend to be persistent. And for large garden beds, tomatoes, peppers, squash, scaling up the recipe and using a pump sprayer can save your hands from tiring too quickly. Every garden has its rhythm, and every plant whispers its own needs. Paying attention to those small differences not only protects them, it deepens your connection to the living world growing under your care. Now that you understand how to treat individual plants, let's look at the bigger picture, the long-term habits that quietly keep pests from returning in the first place. These gentle strategies don't require chemicals or constant effort. Instead, they work with nature rather than against it. Think of them as small, steady acts of prevention that make your garden feel healthier, calmer, and more resilient over time. One of the most charming techniques is companion planting. Herbs like mint, basil, cilantro, and lemongrass carry scents that soft-bodied insects simply can't tolerate. A gentleman from Oregon told me he began tucking pots of mint around his tomatoes, not because he believed it would work, but because he liked the fragrance. By midsummer, he realized he hadn't seen a single aphid on those plants. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the ones hiding in plain sight. Another overlooked habit is inspecting new plants before bringing them home. So many infestations begin not in the soil, but in the store. A woman in her late 60s shared that she once introduced a single nursery rosemary to her patio garden, and within a week, every pot nearby was crawling with whiteflies. Now she quarantines new plants for a few days, gives them a light garlic spray, and watches for any unwelcome guests before letting them join the rest of her collection. It's a small step with enormous benefits. Strengthening your plants is just as important. Pests tend to target weakened or stressed growth, the botanical equivalent of an open invitation. Good watering practices, well-draining soil, and timely pruning help plants develop their own natural defenses. And finally, rotating your pest control methods every few weeks prevents insects from adapting, keeping your garden one step ahead. These gentle habits weave together into a garden that stays healthier, with less effort, giving you more time to enjoy the beauty you've created. But what happens when you discover an infestation that's already out of control? When you lift a single leaf and find entire colonies tucked underneath? Don't worry, dear friend. Even the most seasoned gardeners face moments like these. What matters isn't how bad it looks in the beginning, but how gently and steadily you respond. Plants, much like people, have a remarkable ability to bounce back when given the right care. When a plant is heavily infested, think of your first step not as an attack, but as a reset. A retired nurse from Michigan once told me she treats these situations the way she treated a cluttered room. Remove what's overwhelming so you can see what's salvageable. For plants, that means giving them a firm but careful rinse. Take the pot to the sink shower or garden hose and wash away as many pests as you can. You're not trying to scrub, just letting the water dislodge what shouldn't be there. If a branch is more than halfway overtaken, it's often kinder to remove it. This can feel difficult, especially when you've watched that branch grow. But what you're really doing is removing thousands of pests in one simple cut. A gardener in her 80s once told me, pruning a sick branch isn't loss, it's mercy. And she's right. Once the plant is rinsed and trimmed, give it a thorough spray with your garlic mixture, making sure every remaining leaf is coated. In severe cases, a second application the next day is not only safe, it's helpful. Quarantine the plant for a couple of weeks, keeping it away from healthier ones. With patience, many gardeners report that even plants they nearly gave up on began showing fresh, hopeful growth within days. Your garden wants to recover. Sometimes it just needs a quiet moment and a gentle hand. One of the most encouraging parts of this gentle method is seeing how well it works. For real gardeners, people just like you, who simply wanted their plants to thrive without spending a fortune or introducing harsh chemicals into their peaceful spaces. Over the years, I've collected countless stories, each one a little reminder that nature responds beautifully when we choose patience over panic. Take Linda from Oregon, for example. Her rose bushes had been her pride for nearly 2 decades, but one spring they became so covered in aphids that the leaves looked more gray than green. She told me she stood there one morning, pruning shears in hand, ready to cut the entire shrub to the ground. Instead, she tried the garlic solution as a last attempt. Within 12 days, after 3 gentle treatments, her roses were cleaner than she'd seen them in years, soft blooms opening without a single pest in sight. She still sends before and after photos every season, each more vibrant than the last. Then there's Marcus, a balcony gardener from Texas. His tomato plants were so infested with whiteflies that he almost tossed them out. But he followed the routine weight spray again. His results were so dramatic that he harvested over 40 tomatoes from 4 small plants. He told me he felt like he'd rescued a tiny farm in the sky. And Barbara, a 72-year-old herb gardener from my own town, once spent hundreds every year on organic sprays. When she switched to garlic, she saved more than $200 in a single season while keeping her garden healthier than ever. These stories remind us that effective solutions don't have to be complicated or expensive. They just need to be consistent, gentle, and rooted in understanding. Beyond the relief of finally seeing pests disappear, there's another gift this gentle garlic method offers, one that becomes especially meaningful for gardeners on a fixed income, the comfort of true affordability. Gardening should nourish your spirit, not drain your wallet. Yet many seniors quietly admit that the cost of maintaining healthy plants has crept higher every year. Store shelves filled with brightly labeled bottles can make you feel like the solution must be expensive to be effective. But as many gardeners have discovered, that simply isn't true. A man from Pennsylvania once told me he felt embarrassed at how much he had been spending on commercial sprays. Over the course of one summer, he went through 4 different products, each costing more than the last, only to end up with the same recurring pest problem. When he finally added the totals, he realized he had spent close to $200 just trying to stay ahead of bugs. And yet the results never lasted. Compare that to garlic powder, one little bottle for $3 that can make 20 or more batches of spray. Add a few cents worth of dish soap and some tap water, and you have a full season of protection for less than the price of a single chemical bottle. One gardener jokingly told me she felt like she'd discovered a secret sale no one talks about because the savings were so dramatic. But this isn't just about money saved. It's about freedom regained. Freedom from relying on products with long warning labels. Freedom from feeling pressured to buy more every few weeks. Freedom from wondering whether something affordable can actually work. When you choose simple ingredients that support your plants and your health, you're not cutting corners, you're choosing wisdom. Perhaps the most beautiful part of gardening isn't the harvest or the perfect bloom, it's the way it connects us to one another. Gardeners often say they learn as much from shared stories as they do from books or classes. And when you find a gentle, effective trick like this garlic solution, it becomes part of a larger circle of wisdom that grows with every person who tries it. I've seen older gardeners light up when they talk about helping a neighbor rescue a struggling plant or teaching a grandchild how to care for a tender new seedling. These exchanges don't just solve pest problems, they strengthen community. One woman in her 70s shared that she used to feel isolated after moving to a new apartment. Her balcony garden became the only thing that felt familiar. One afternoon, a neighbor noticed her spraying her herbs and asked what she was doing. She explained the garlic method, and that simple conversation turned into weekly garden chats, shared cuttings, and eventually a small group that now trades tips and seedlings. It started with bugs, she said, laughing, but it ended with friends. Sharing knowledge also empowers gardeners who feel discouraged. Many people hesitate to ask for help because they believe they should already know what to do. But when you talk openly about what works and what doesn't, you make space for others to learn without judgment. Even online communities form where gardeners exchange photos, compare results, and cheer each other on. Every tip you pass along, every success story you share, becomes a kind of gift. By spreading gentle, effective methods like the garlic spray, you're not just improving gardens, you're encouraging confidence, connection, and a sense of belonging. And that, dear friend, is one of the most meaningful harvests of all. As we come to the end of this gentle journey, I hope you can feel a little more peace settling into your gardening heart. Pests will always be part of the landscape. They come with the territory just as storms and seasons do. But what truly matters is knowing that you have simple, safe, and reliable ways to support your plants without stress, without chemicals, and without spending more than you need to. Gardening, after all, should be a source of calm joy, not worry. Remember that your garlic mixture isn't just a recipe. It's a tool that helps you stay connected to your garden in a mindful, intentional way. Each time you spray the leaves, check the undersides, or watch new growth appear after a difficult week, you're participating in the quiet rhythm of care that makes gardening so meaningful. And always know that mistakes, spraying at the wrong time, forgetting a follow-up treatment, missing a cluster of pests are not failures. They're simply lessons reminding you that every day in the garden is an opportunity to learn something new. I hope you also carry with you the stories of the gardeners who found success, confidence, and even companionship through this simple method. Their results show what's possible, but their journeys show something even more important, that healing a garden often brings healing to the gardener too. As you step into your own garden tomorrow, may you feel empowered, hopeful, and deeply connected to the life growing around you. If this gentle solution brings relief to your plants or ease to your days, I'd love to hear your story. Until then, dear friend, may your garden thrive in soft light, steady growth, and the comfort of knowing you're never alone in this journey. As we close our time together today, dear friend, I hope you feel a sense of renewed confidence, soft but steady, like the warmth that comes after a long night of rain. Gardening can sometimes feel unpredictable, even overwhelming, but the beauty of it all is that nature rarely asks for perfection. What it asks for instead is presence, patience, and a willingness to learn alongside it. And you've shown all three simply by being here. This gentle garlic solution is more than a remedy for pests. It's a reminder that simple things used with care can bring incredible change. You don't have to rely on harsh sprays or exhausting routines. You don't need to second-guess whether your garden is safe for children, pets, or curious hands. With just a spoonful of the right ingredients, you can restore strength to your plants, peace to your mind, and balance to the small world you've cultivated right outside your door. Take pride in the wisdom you carry. Every leaf you turn, every spray you apply, every blossom you encourage is part of a long tradition of gardeners who worked gently with the land. Let your garden be a sanctuary, not a place of stress, but a place where you can sip your morning coffee and feel quietly proud of the life you've nurtured. I hope you'll stay connected, share your experiences, and continue learning alongside this warm community of gardeners. Until we meet again, may your days be calm, your hands be steady, and your garden be full of growth, color, and joy. Happy gardening, dear friend.